When a wealthy family hires shamans and Taoist geomancers to exhume a cursed grave, they uncover something far older and more dangerous than they imagined. Buried beneath layers of history lies a secret that ties together the living, the dead, and the ghosts of Korea's past. Exhuma is about what happens when modern belief collides with ancient ritual, and when the wounds of history refuse to stay closed. Welcome back to Foreplay. We are on the third film of our Occult Horror Arc here for Halloween, and this is going to be a Korean film. In fact, the highest grossing Korean film of 2024, and one of the most highest grossing films from Korea ever, including above Parasite, and that is going to be Exhuma, or in Korean, it's called Pa-myo. And I did warn you on previous episodes that this is going to be a little bit confusing if you do not understand Korean and also possibly Japanese cultures, because it is a film that is very much about a different kind of occult. It's not the occultism that we've seen in the previous episodes about that's related to Christianity or Christian apocrypha or Western mythologies like witches with Suspiria that we're going to get into.
I'm shocked that it had that box office, Monty, because I've seen a lot of like films in Korean and Japanese that I'm shocked don't get the big Western audience. I don't know how this would have any international audience outside of basically
because everybody
Korea.
In
and
Korea
when I looked it up,
it
hasn't even been released in Japan, mate. It's coming up in October, apparently. Yeah, so that's what I'm shocked about. I thought maybe Japan had like their own interest. No, it's just Korea and whatever else. Yeah.
Yeah, this movie was almost all the box office success was just from Korea itself, which I think is really interesting. But I figured, and I did warn everybody that I think that this is the weakest film in this arc, but it is interesting to watch because it does contain, I think, a lot of interesting occult concepts that are unique to the East. And it not only touches on Korea, but it touches on China. It touches very heavily on Japan. It touches on the history of Korea and Japan. So I do think it's a fun watch because you'll be exposed to things that probably most of you have never seen. I will help explain some of these things to you as well.
By the way, another thing I don't think people might know, and I know this just from my own short time living in Korea, is I always tell people, it's actually something I tried to tell them when there was that whole scandal with LS not getting to join T1, and then people were like, I don't get it. I don't, didn't think, and I told people the fastest growing religion people always say in Korea is Christianity, actually. Loads of modern Christian. In fact, a lot of Korean movies now, you'll see the grandparents are Christian in it. That's like the whole thing. That's their version of being conservative. So that's the other thing I also feel like if you're Korean must make this movie very interesting is that actually, I mean, Monty, let's just get into it. Even though shamanism is like the traditional religion, as far as I know, like it's like not that many actual Koreans do it. A lot of Koreans are just secular, right?
A lot of Koreans do the shamanism, which is what's interesting. You would never guess unless you were like,
I mean, stuff like,
here.
As far as I know, like people like StarCraft players only interact with it when it's things like your pet grandfather dies and you go to like the grave and do that sort of a thing. No one's doing like daily rituals and things. It's not like a thing in, like, it's not, there's no Korean cult like sermons in this. It's kind of like a thing in the background from the past, right?
Sure, but I think it's important to note that the shamans, what are called mudang, are very active, especially by first world country standards. I'm unaware of any other first world country that has as many shamans and like as active an animistic tradition. Like you can look at Japan and say, okay, well, they've got Shintoism and, you know, people still go to the shrines and honor that. But the shamans in Korea are incredibly active. So there are a lot of them, first and foremost. And being a mudang or a shaman is not typically, it's not always their primary job. Some of them are just like taxi drivers that do this stuff on the side, or they have other jobs and they do these rituals on their own time. But despite the fact that there are a lot of Christians in Korea, like you note, it's still a minority Christian country. It's only like 25% of people are Christian. So a lot of people are still Buddhist or they're kind of agnostic. But the traditions of shamanism are still actually actively interlinked with Christianity. So you might go to church and then open your new business, but when you open your new business, you hire a shaman to come do a ritual to give you good luck for your business. And a lot of the cults in Korea, the Christian cults, are crossover belief structures with these shamans. So what they do is these charismatic leaders who create these cults pull Christian ideas, and then they pull shamanistic ideas and they smash them together and create these Christian cults, which is very strange.
The thing is, when you look on Google, it's claimed on Wikipedia that based on a survey last year, 51% identify with no religion, 31% with Christianity, 17% with Buddhism, and other religions 2%.
Yep.
Well, I don't mean, Monty, I don't mean it's not in their culture. I mean, it's not like something people actively are a part of. Like, it feels like almost like people doing fortune telling or something in the West, you know?
Sure. Yeah, but like the weird thing is the government will hire them to like do rituals at parks and stuff like that, you know, and so they're very, well, a lot of people I don't think necessarily interact with them on a regular basis. They will still go to them for readings sometimes. A lot of most Korean kids are still named via horoscope. So there will be divinations based off of auspicious horoscopes. And that's still the number one reason that people change their names, their legal names in Korea, is because their horoscope doesn't match with their name and it's brought them, you know, apparently bad fortune. So there is still really heavy emphasis on some of these traditions, even if they're not, like you say, in the day-to-day. They're definitely like, you walk around and you see these people doing these things, right? They're doing rituals. They're an active part of society. Like I said, you might hire one to do a ritual for good fortune. They have a lot of different rituals. I've been to a mudang to have my own fortune read, and they do the thing that we see in this film, which is like be possessed by spirits during these readings. So, you know, whether you believe it or not, what happened with me was that the shaman was possessed by the spirit of a little girl who was afraid of a tiger spirit that was surrounding me. And this tiger spirit was supposedly keeping me alive because I already should have died. That's what I was told by a Korean shaman. So you can go to them and kind of get these, you have these experiences, which
That's
are very
why
interesting.
Big fan of Gen G. That's a joke.
I was going to make a joke about Riot.
Rocks Tigers could have done that one too, I guess. Yeah, for Rocks Tigers too. Yeah, true.
We've all got there. We've all fill it
True.
in.
Yeah.
So I mean, you these people are very accessible for the most part, and there's kind of two mechanisms to which you can become a shaman. One of them is by your blood, which is what the main character in Exhuma is, because her sisters that we meet in the film are also shamans, right? And the other one is her assistant, who is a shaman, like they've been called to it somehow. So you could become a shaman either way.
That's the thing about this film that's also a bit weird. The first part, you will actually think in line of this arc, this is like Korean Hereditary, because they're setting it up like that almost, right? Except obviously that kind of the red herring is it's like it was actually that his coffin just happened to be on top of this other one, which is the real story, you know. But then the other angle, which actually I thought wasn't made that explicit until really late in the film, is that the woman, the Hua-Rin or whatever her name is, she essentially, as far as I can tell, just keeps all of that from the other characters in the film, that's her involvement, etc. And that's like something lurking in the background until the last sort of act, basically.
Yeah,
because it did seem like this film was trying to mishmash a lot of storylines and concepts together.
It is.
Yeah, that was the problem for me with the film overall. Like, first of all, you know, approaching this as a non-Korean, like, you know, I'm obviously someone that watches a lot of Asian cinema, you know, but I'm unlike you two. I've never lived in Asia. I've never lived in Korea, and I was finding it quite like difficult to to sort of assimilate quickly all of the pieces I needed to know to understand what was going on. Like, it is an exposition heavy movie, but in a way not enough. Like, there were parts of it where it's like, and of course we will need the horse's blood, and you go, why? And they go, yes, and that's it, you know, and you
just
know,
taken as a given. I know what you mean.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay.
And when you consider it's actually blending multiple belief systems, essentially, it's blending geomancy, it's blending feng shui. It's blending.
Even that's really hard to understand at the beginning, Richard. Like, I was thinking, like, are those connected concepts in any way? Like, what are the different roles of these people? Yeah, true.
Yeah, and that's the thing, that the way the team is assembled is they're all experts essentially in these like relevant, you know, areas of expertise. But the when you try and combine it all into an exorcism essentially, or I mean, I don't even know if I want to use that term for it, because where the movie goes. It's not really an exorcism per se.
It's an exorcism of the Japanese spirits of Korea.
Yeah, but
ultimately,
it's more like you're laying a curse to rest as well. And then you've got the actual physical component of it with the metal spikes, which are designed to disrupt the fucking ley lines of South Korea as some sort of spiritual attack.
But that's one of the reveals, is that it's like in that particular part of Korea, which is like, fuck hell, or whatever. Like,
so, and this is what I mean. I hate to say it, but, you know, obviously, as an ignorant Westerner, like, I was like, there were points where I'm pausing the movie and I'm just sort of like having to, okay, so this and that and this. And so just to talk a little bit about my experience with some of this stuff. Now, first of all, again, I've watched a lot of Asian cinema. You know, I know about the writing on the face. We've seen Kwaidan, etc. All of this stuff. You know, but like the thing for me that's super interesting that I learned in my life was actually how serious feng shui is. Because feng shui was introduced into the UK basically as something for housewives to do in the 90s. It was basically another one. You know what we do over here is we go, oh, Buddhism sounds good. And they go, well, yes, but you have to do this, and this. And Tibetan Buddhism actually has some very, you know, non-compatible ideas about women. They believe it's a lower form of existence. You know, no, I don't want
even
any of
though
that.
it mainly appeals to women in the West is the joke.
Yeah. And I don't want any of that. I just want the cool meditation and the bald head. Is that all right?
Yeah. Also, Tibetan Buddhism includes like literal human bone ritual implements.
By the way, it's essentially what they do with everything. It's like the idea that yoga just became stretching in the West.
Yeah, exactly. What we do is what we're very good is we're very good at like parsing out the difficult stuff or the complex stuff or the unpalatable stuff and taking away, like, by the way, not a bad thing to do, taking away sort of the distillation of what the message is about. And so, you know, we've done it with Buddhism. It's very, you know, a light diet version of Buddhism that people engage in over here in the West. Same with yoga, great, another great analogy. And feng shui was one of these things that was introduced in the 90s. It's basically, well, you know, if your house looks shit, it'll disrupt your life. So make sure your bed is facing this way. And why don't you have a window facing the sun? Why not make that room your bedroom? And that way, the sun will always rise and shine. And it was like this thing to basically preoccupy housewives, and, you know, essentially. And it was very big for a while. And when I saw that, I was like, well, that's another one of them distilled Western bullshit things. And then I went and looked into it, and it's like it's a fucking big deal in a lot of Asian cultures.
Oh yeah,
you know,
entire cities. Cities.
Buildings and cities are assembled based on the core premises of feng shui. And still to this day, that's true. And so, obviously, you know, there's parts of this movie I was really interested in, because to see practical applications of these things you've heard about, like geomancy and like feng shui, and applying them to an occult setting and to lay to rest a curse, all very interesting. Unfortunately, I just think for someone that hasn't been steeped in this culture, it really is essentially just an assault. You know, it's like doing an exam. It's like cramming for an exam. The first half of the movie feels like you're cramming for an exam. And unfortunately, I don't think the second half of the movie really lives up to the payoff, because it does a good job of building up tension and introducing elements. And then, I hate to say it, by the time the Japanese samurai monster dude comes around asking for melons and sweet fish, I'm sort of done with it.
お主は大名の言葉が耳に入らんのか?
Now, if you're finding our occult horror arc a little bit too scary, you may want to avert your gaze. And what better way to do that than with the 100% blackout provided by the Manta Sleep Mask Pro. This thing's great, guys. It has adjustable eye cups with Velcro, so you can make sure it fits your face absolutely perfectly. It's made out of lightweight memory foam, and it has cooling strips on the inside, so it will never get hot on your head. I've been using it every night since I got mine, and I've been loving it because I need that pure darkness to sleep. They even have options with Bluetooth headphones if you like to listen to music or other meditation apps before you head to sleep. That'll be an option for you as well. They're incredibly comfortable, and we are happy to have them here as a sponsor on Foreplay. Manta Sleep has a ton of options for you. You can head over to mantasleep.com and check them all out right now. So head on over there and you guys can use the code FOURPLAY, all one word, FOURPLAY, to unlock 10% off your purchase at Manta Sleep. Highly recommend you guys pick one of these up. They are fantastic.
I mean, I'll also tell people right at the start, you can enjoy this movie two ways. I sat down in my big chair, cinema, ready to go, and I'd ordered the dubbed version, right?
Right.
And I never watched dubs, but I was sat down, I had a beer, I was like, fuck it, you know what I mean? I let it roll. It's one of the most hilariously bad dubs I've ever heard in my life. Like, actually, laugh
one
out
thing
loud
I'm
funny.
always shocked about
Laugh
is
out loud funny.
I think it's because obviously a lot of people who initially get an anime in the West and don't want to watch subs and they find it annoying, etc., etc. But I just watch so many foreign language films, not a deal to me. The reason why I never ever watch dubs is I get that another thing is in the West they actually get famous people to like narrate the roles, etc. What I don't get is this: the one time I've ever watched a film later that I originally watched as the sub and then I watched it as a dub and it had all famous Western characters, I was like, this isn't this may as well be like they didn't watch the original movie. Like they're doing their own shit with it. Like they're not doing none of the. Here's the thing. Yes, obviously you won't get from the words like literally what they're singing. You have to read that, but like the acting is totally different. That's the thing I find bizarre. I know what you mean, Richard. I've seen some really bad dub clips from like really famous films.
This was definitely one of them.
Makes it almost comedy. Like you're saying,
This is definitely
like
one of them.
Serious film.
I went back and watched some of the tense scenes. So I watched it in Korean, and it was, and the acting was really solid. We'll talk about that later, no doubt. I thought the cast did a really good job.
Yeah, the acting's really good in this movie. There's a lot of famous Korean actors in here.
If you watch the dub, like the scene where he's in the hospital bed and he's like saying, "All you bitches are gonna die." Whew. That was a solid 5 minutes of laughing because the way it's delivered is so unbelievable.
I'm sure Danian, our editor, will put it in here for us.
Yeah. If you can go get the dub, he literally says, "Oh, you fucking bitches are gonna die." It's like a really bad, like almost like a manga level fucking thing.
You fucking bitches, you're going to die.
So it was. So anyway, I did that. But look, just to the point, I think this movie for me is probably something that I think a lot of people are going to bounce off very quickly because it is expecting you to have like a surface level understanding and a lot of concepts that, unfortunately for Westerners, even if we know what they are, even if we understand the basics of geomancy, our version doesn't have any practical application. It's like. And all of our kind of shamanistic cultures, shamanistic religions, they don't really exist anymore. You'd be talking about modern Wiccans or Druids, and
but you have to understand that this is removed. But I think what's cool about this is even if you don't understand it, what this shows is how in modern Korea there is this really interesting collision between like Christianity, animistic belief structures, and capitalism. And how this manifests is you have literal Christians who are trying to hire geomancers and mudangs to fix a spiritual problem, and these people are trying to get paid. And they're still doing their job. They're not conning anybody, right? And in fact, they go above and beyond. They actually, when all hell breaks loose, literally, they try and fix the fucking problem, right? And when they realize there's a deeper issue that they're not even paid to deal with.
Didn't that guy even say at some point when he's like chanting, one of the people who's like one of the original four hired, the least one in the movie, if you remember, the one that's with the guy from fucking Old Boy. He even says something like, I was owed like 200,000. I can't remember if he says won or yen or whatever, but that's like 20K. People don't know. Like, that'll be big money.
They're gonna pay them $500,000 US.
There you go. I actually thought, unfortunately, there's another thing that didn't work, mate. That wasn't explicit for a Western, I don't feel like, of how much money. This isn't like $1,000 or something. This is big fucking money.
Like $500K US. So I mean, they're talking about big money in this movie, and so these people, what's funny is that they have in this film, they have obvious spiritual powers that we see, and they aren't hired to deal with the samurai problem, and yet they deal with it anyway, right? They do their duty, but you can see how there's this really interesting collision of the new religion in Korea, which is Christianity, with old traditions plus like capitalism and these people treating their spiritual practices as a business.
That was the most interesting part of the film for me, was ultimately subtextually exploring, what happens to traditional Asian cultures when they want to interface with the modern world.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you keep and what do you eschew to do that? And what's practical and what isn't? And what's worth forgetting and what isn't? And it that stuff was super interesting to me because I always do feel, when I've been to these countries, it's like you really are, there really like there's sort of two worlds that you witness simultaneously. I always feel, and that is like you see the world of tradition and all of this incredible like refined culture that's been preserved and resonated through the ages, and then you see this little glimpse of what it is to be in the global world and their particular take on it. And so, you go to and just pick any, Asian country, and it's like they've got things out there that like you really, like I say, you can't believe. Like it's so stimulating and rich. And then on the other hand, they've still got the shit you're used to from your world as well. And it's like it can be very tonally jarring. And it's like obviously we all have to kind of make concessions about what we're all doing this all over the world right now. What do we retain culturally? What do we need to retain culturally to maintain identity and heritage without that becoming isolatory and insular and ultimately non-practical? For instance, just to throw this out there, it's not a direct analog, but it might give people the idea. There are a lot of people in parts of Britain that live in areas that have dead languages, essentially, Cornish and to a lesser extent Gaelic. People make the same argument about Welsh. The Welsh language is not a practical language.
There's supposedly only one town in the north or something that speaks it, right, Richard?
Well, basically the only other place they speak Wales is in Patagonia.
Yes.
And the reason for that
is
true
true as well.
Yeah, the reason for that is because of the only people that could hack the high altitudes were like Welsh miners, because they were just like these mutants that were just super powered to work in unhospitable conditions. And it's like there's a big argument about, is it worth preserving these languages and how much money should we spend on it? I think it's something like 200 people speak Cornish. It might even be less than that. How many resources do we divert to retaining these dead languages and things like this? And there's a lot of debate about it. In Wales, it's part of the law. Every sign has to be bilingual. If you have a sign up, it's got to be in Welsh and English to preserve our Welsh heritage. And it's like there's a lot of money spent on that, obviously, every year. And it's like,
weird, Richard, that people will take the excuse to take tax money to reserve heritage sites for this reason, but they don't do it with the language. You'd think that would be a thing that was promoted.
Yeah. Now, obviously, people have different ideas. Some people believe history of all kinds and languages and tradition and heritage, we must preserve that at all costs, even if it makes us a little bit isolated or difficult to engage with for people that aren't from that cultural tradition or that shared history. But then equally, by the same token, there are people who believe like, look, we live in a global society. Anything that makes us accessible the world over, everyone speaks English, right? So we're all citizens of the globe. And some people believe that, and believe that eschewing the more thorny aspects of heritage and culture is actually a good direction to go in. And so what I liked about this movie is ultimately it is exploring, first of all, just that juxtaposition of the rising faith of Christianity plus the old ways, the old way of doing things, the old belief systems. Also, as you said, Monty, the now capitalist versus the natural, I guess, is how they always present that spectrum. But then on top of that, it's also talking about Korea's own history and its history, particularly with Japan. And sort of, ultimately that animus is kind of what's exorcised at the end, if you want to look at it meta-textually. Yep. So I all of that was very interesting to me, even if I felt a bit lost at times.
By the way,
Well-
another thing is if you actually were Japanese, one of the spoilers wouldn't even be a spoiler to you. The name of the fucking monk is Kitsune. If you don't know what's weird about Japanese and Korean is they pronounce G as a K because they have different sounds. That it literally means like fox spirit or something.
Got one up there.
So if you actually if you knew what that was already,
Kitsune.
you'd already be like, wait a minute, that's a weird name for a monk.
Yeah.
But we don't know this is Western. We're just going in like, okay.
Yeah,
And
there's a
the
bunch of
reveals
stuff
are
like this
ridiculous.
that's double entendres
There's
where
loads
the
of them.
Japanese guy was named Gisune, but it's actually the implication is that it's Kitsune, the Japanese word, but they never actually explicitly say that. So you have to just know that that's the Japanese word, which people in Asia do know because Kitsune is a very.
But as a Westerner, I feel you'll never get that. But it's
So-
why actually to go back to what we were saying earlier. Here's the thing. I wasn't a big fan of this film. I do like some Korean and Japanese and Chinese films, etc. But I have to say, actually, a lot of the ones I like, I'll just tell you, have an obvious shamanism. I like the ones where people like Kurosawa or fucking, what's his name, Satoshi Kon, they're clearly actually influenced by the West. They just do it then through their lens, right? So as a result, it's going to actually be easy for me to get into because, yes, some of their films are going to actually parody things Tarantino-esque from Western films. When it's like this store, I find it really hard to get into. Like I have to say, like one thing that even though I don't think actually it was that enjoyable to watch, I can see why the scriptwriter probably thought they cooked with this movie because essentially it's quite long and the first sort of like third of the movie is pure red herring. It's just the Korean thing of like we buried him in the wrong place and so the grandfather's going to come back and he's going to try and fuck with our family line. But if you remember, they get rid of that really quickly with the cremation. Like that's done so already, and it's only from that it's like right then the next layer is that was just a red herring. It was actually about the one below where he was buried, and then you go into the whole Japanese thing, and then even then it's like the Japanese thing, but tying into the history of Japan and Korea. And so actually that part is interesting. I will say though, that is one detail that I don't think you get in that many horror movies. Normally you save the big twist for 2/3 of the way through, and it'll be the whole movie. Actually, essentially the first third's almost like just red herring.
Oh, it's a setup.
Yeah. And you know, look, there's it sort of builds up a little bit of mystery at the start. You know,
can I do the synopsis for people?
Yeah,
like,
right in the middle of the episode. Go for it.
Look, we didn't get to it, but it is important to discuss this
because you put the synopsis at the beginning before we're talking. So who are you talking to right now?
Yeah, true.
Question?
No, I put a 20-second question at the start of the episode. We don't do the whole synopsis.
I thought you were like, this film was from Japan in 1987. It was released, and it's a film about families. And who's that? What's that all about?
Well, if you don't like it, it's the teaser for the themes that we're talking about in the episode. That's what I try and do. But in terms of the synopsis, which we can refer back to here because it'll give you the whole story. So basically, the main characters there's 4 main characters, and I will only refer to them as their jobs because it's going to be too confusing for me to throw a bunch of Korean names around forever. So there's the main shaman whose name is Hwarim, and she's the woman who is descended from shamans and has her power from like the legacy. She has an assistant who's learning from her called Bongil, and he's the guy who is like basically was chosen to be a shaman. He's not from, his blood isn't like shaman. And his whole body's covered in tattoos of Buddhist scripture, which is actually an important plot point. Then there's 2 other characters that they encounter, and one of them is the geomancer, the feng shui geomancer.
The one actor you've ever seen if you're watching this film, basically the guy from Old Boy.
Yeah. His job is to find auspicious locations via feng shui for people's graves, and he works with
if you can find it. Sounds like
he works with a funeral director who is a much more like Western style undertaker. You know, he's the one who drives the hearse and takes care of the body.
He's the guy who just
and everything
complains
like
all
that.
the time, basically. Like, the fuck, I'm doing this now.
But I think that's what's so interesting is you have these occult elements that are interfacing with the practical, like funerary
these
needs.
people aren't equipped to do the shamanism shit, are they? They're just people who are like fucking up their depth as soon as they find all this weird shit. Yeah.
Right. So you get this mortician and he's kind of the comic relief of this as well, it has to say. So basically the story is that there is this family called the Park family, and they live in Los Angeles, like many Koreans do. It's the largest population of Koreans outside of Korea. And so they're very wealthy. and they are being called in by a man because his son will not get better. So they call in the two shamans, and they show up, and they realize that this is like a curse from beyond the grave from the main character's grandfather. So we have the baby, the father, and then his parents who live in Los Angeles all together. His aunt is in Korea still, and this is, I know it's going to be confusing. So his grandfather, they identify that his dead grandfather is, you know, giving this curse, and we're not really sure why they have so much money, but that is actually a very important point as well that's going to happen later on. So basically, the shamans then go and tap the geomancer and the mortician to go examine this grave and figure out what's wrong, because the rich family is going to pay them a lot of money. They dig up, they first off find that the grave is like crazy inauspicious by feng shui standards, so they're really creeped out, and they decide to exhume the corpse anyway, which is why this movie is called Exhuma. Pamyo means exhumation in Korean. So they dig up the body, and then the casket gets opened by somebody who thinks there's treasure inside, when they can't cremate it because it's raining, and the spirit can't go to the afterlife if it's raining. And so some guy in the mortuary decides to look in this expensive looking coffin to like loot it. It lets out the spirit of the grandfather. The grandfather spirit goes on a rampage, trying to and successfully killing multiple members of the Park family before they cremate the body and stop the spirit. Basically, there's parts where they summon the spirit inside the shamans, and they talk to him, and there's a lot. But ultimately, as Thorin said, this is more or less a red herring, because the real point of the movie is once they incinerate this coffin, they actually go back to the grave and realize that this guy was only buried there because it's hiding a different coffin that is buried vertically in the ground. So they exhume that one, and that one, it turns out, contains a 12-foot tall samurai corpse. And
just quickly as well, can you talk about the significance of it being vertical as opposed to horizontal?
So we'll get to that. So basically, there is a larger conspiracy here that it gets into Japanese history, and the idea is there is this Japanese shaman, so it's like a shaman duel, and there's this guy named Gisune who is kind of we're never sure if he's really a person or if he's actually like a fox spirit, because he's kind of shrouded in these old pictures from the Korean occupation of Japan, which happened from the 19-teens up until the end of World War II, because Korea was in fact, a Japanese colony at that point in time. So the Japanese controlled Japan. And what we find out is that the grandfather character, who is the spooky ghost who got let out, was a collaborator with the Japanese. So the reason the family is rich is because they were traitors to the Korean people, which is obviously very frowned upon in Korea today. And so they don't want, they kind of pieced out to LA.
All the American businesses that got rich doing business with Hitler, basically.
Exactly. So they kind of pieced out to LA. I think probably the implication here is to avoid scrutiny by their fellow Koreans, because they, if this information gets out, it's very socially damaging for them. So they made all this money, and effectively the Japanese were using him as a puppet in order to control the Korean people. He was a high-ranking official, and so in the colonized Korean government. And so this Japanese shaman took his body and put him over a point in the land, because there was a Japanese conspiracy to disrupt the energy of Korea. Like Richard said, the ley lines, the feng shui of the entire country, where they were putting a bunch of metal spikes in Korea. Now, later we find out that a bunch of these metal spikes had been removed, but the most important metal spike was actually under this guy's grave and is encased within the body of a samurai that died in the late 1500s or early 1600s. He died at Sekigahara, which we'll get into also. An important historical note. So he died hundreds of years ago, like 400 years ago, and he was then exhumed himself, brought to Korea, and then they shoved a flaming katana inside his body, because that is actually the final iron spike that disrupts Korea's fortune. And this is very close to the North Korean border. And there's this line in the film that goes that the fox broke the tiger's back, basically. And so the idea is that Korea has always been thought of as a tiger because it looks like a tiger that's clinging on to the bottom of the Asian continent, the peninsula. And so where the tiger's back would be, there's this spike that's the dead samurai that they buried so that nobody would find it because they didn't want to exhume the grave of this Korean official. And this is disrupting the energy. And the implication is obviously that the broken back is the division between North and South Korea, and that, in fact, the Japanese disruption of feng shui has caused the nation of Korea to be broken.
By the way, notice there's another problem if you're a Westerner. Like, that's like, all right, but that's not some big, like, dun, dun, dun. Like, okay. Because remember,
a lot of this is
shit.
implied,
yeah,
right? But like, because they mention that it's the grave is very close to the North Korean border, and then you kind of have to be like, oh, well, the Japanese assault on the middle of Korea via iron spikes and feng shui.
If I was to give someone like a Western context,
caused the damage to the nation.
The reason why this doesn't hit at all, it has zero impact on me, mate. That's just like, okay. And can I have the next story beat, please? Is because, like, I'll give you an example. I'm not from this culture, bro. If that story was like, oh, they're unearthing like a same thing in England, right? And then what happens is eventually they get to one where it turns out that was like one of the main crusaders. And then when he was in the Holy Land, he did some epic thing, which has caused like a rift across Europe. Then suddenly that would all, the cultural context would be there. And I'd be able to understand why that's significant. But like, that was one of the issues I had with this film as well, is that even when they would do the hit, which I can tell is supposed to be like, I'd just be like, right, takes notes. Okay, that's Korea, right? Next
but
thing,
there's a reason,
you know what I mean?
There's a reason why this is so popular in Korea, because, obviously, like, all this is very well understood and people really vibed with this, right?
Sure.
So basically what happens, they find the samurai, and it turns out that when they pull him up, he starts murdering people and possessing people, and then flying back to like go back into the ground where the spike is supposed to be to continue disrupting the energy of Korea.
That was what was supposed to happen when it went into the fireball.
Yeah, he flies back to the site
gone back in,
and reburies himself.
Okay, fair enough.
So it's a self-returning spike. And so eventually they figure out, oh, we got to like kill the samurai. How do we kill the zombie samurai? Well, we use the power of Chinese elements, which are
the joke is they actually do use feng shui essentially.
Yes,
the ultimate exorcism tool, which is like, all right, man. Again, that's just have a good reputation of the West guys. That's all.
In the Chinese or Asian element system, like
so you get the perfect studio apartment with the sofa in exactly the right spot, and then all the evils vanish.
So the Western elements, people are familiar with like earth, air, fire, water, right? The Chinese elements.
That's Western magic too, yeah.
Yeah, the Chinese elements are metal, earth, fire, wood, water. Okay, so there's 5 and there's no air. So what happens is that the feng shui geomancer fighting the samurai realizes that the samurai is hot metal because of the flaming sword they put inside of him. So he's going to cover this pickaxe handle with his own blood and hit him with wet wood, and that cleaves him in half. And then everybody was happy because Japan was defeated.
Yeah.
Did you actually know, Monty, before this film, that maybe you knew the tiger thing? Did you know that Japan's supposed to be a fox? Did you know that going in?
I didn't know that Japan was.
That's a pretty key piece of info for me.
So I don't think it's that Japan is supposed to be a fox. I think it's just that Japan has a strong, like the kitsune is a very obvious like Japanese animal.
I mean, it's like Naruto and stuff. Yeah,
sure.
Yeah. Fox demons and shit. Yeah,
yes.
Of course.
Yeah.
I didn't know if this was supposed to be like a popularly well-known thing though.
So yes, I think so. Like I knew about it. I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, obviously that's not really a yardstick for the normal person. Is it, really?
That's why I said I don't know.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I have a quick question for you. Actually, this is genuinely a question about the plot. Are they trying to imply that the woman who's from the shamanism line is actually flashing back to like past lifetimes where she did some of these things? Right. Yeah. I couldn't tell if that was explicit or if that was like dream logic or some shit.
It's also she's being helped by her dead grandmother, who is also a shaman. So she appears sometimes, but the implication is because she has the
they
shamanic
got some, like,
legacy
Force ghost shit going on.
Yeah, she has like her grandma's force ghost in there. Like,
anyway, this is what's confusing. If you're a Westerner, that made me think, oh, right, wait, she's already possessed. That's what's going on.
Yeah, exactly, dude.
This is some hereditary shit like that. That's what I mean. The red herring's was the joke.
Nah,
Is inadvertent.
you've just got to know that because she's a direct descendant of him, and
this
occasionally her relatives
literally
can come back.
needs a fucking primer printed out and put on the
it is
seat
bad.
before you go to the cinema. Like, you must know these 5 things. But I guess the problem is there'd be spoilers in some way. But it makes it tough.
This movie might be as confusing as Primer.
And here's the difference, Monty. I actually think in the movie Cure that we reviewed, the actual elements that you didn't get the premise of, that really worked, though. It just maintained a mystery and a mystique. This one was tough because I feel like you had to actually know these things to understand the impact of what's happening, you know. That one worked just as some creepy shit in the same way as I could imagine you could show like someone Japanese as a contrast. You could probably show them like, you know, fucking some like weird American Gothic story where they wouldn't really need to know about the history of Amish people and stuff, you know. They could probably get that it's just ghosts and things.
Like The Witch. Like, I don't think you like The Witch.
No,
for example.
exactly.
Yeah,
you can just take it at face value, can't you?
I don't think you have to know a lot to understand the ghost part. That's the start of this, because it's a pretty straightforward, like, they're being haunted.
Actually, I've got a random thing to ask as well. Am I missing something? In Korea, are people really using like 7-digit fucking latitude codes and going, oh yeah, I don't know what that is. Just send it to the fucking woods somewhere, like, why do you keep doing that thing? You know, 36.187, shut the fuck up.
No, but
it's
also what I don't understand. He was possessed by the fucking Oni at that point, wasn't he? So
I don't know, mate.
Were they using that back then?
I don't know.
No, they were using that. So that was the latitude and longitude were written by the Japanese on the back of the gravestone because it was the precise coordinates that they needed to put that metal spike to disrupt Korea's energy.
None of this came to me, mate. I was just watching the film. Again, I didn't know it was homework, motherfucker. I'm trying to enjoy
No,
movies.
that's what I mean. I told you it was like you had to cram for the exam.
But see, this is why I think it's interesting, is because like
for next week, everyone read all of Proust. See ya. I'm out.
No, I think it's interesting to see like how different, like, because you have to keep in mind how popular this was in Korea. So it's not like this is difficult to decipher with the right cultural context. Right. I thought it would be interesting to talk about the occult from an entirely different perspective, but it does all line up. Like a lot of the stuff in here, I think is interesting, and it does, like, once you start to understand it, it makes sense. Like you just have to know about Japanese and Korean cultural demons.
You know what would be really cool? If we could just now insert a montage of every time someone projectile vomits in this movie.
Oh, it's every person. I know.
It is mental, mate. Like, if you thought there was puke in The Exorcist, fuck me. Every time someone's possessed or does a thing, the spirit.
Also, I have a question about culture, Monty. Right? In a Western film, you might say everyone loves to make fun of what victims are like in horror films. Now people react crazily. I always say, yeah, because you would act like Hereditary if you actually saw a demon. You'd go, well, I'm gonna back out here and not. You'd fucking lose your mind. To lose your mind with the most natural reaction. No one does, Monty. Everyone watches people projectile vomit and then turn around, and then they're just all stood there in silence, going, "Shit, this is crazy." Like, why is no one screaming? What is that?
There really is a kind of like insane
weird.
stoicism.
I know, like
they're shamans. They're used to it.
What is this?
Yeah, but come on. The only time anyone looks scared is when Big Daddy fucking samurai
rocks up. Yeah.
Why is he 8 foot tall as well?
That is dope, though, I can't lie. That's one part.
Oh no, to be fair, the design on him is
that
wicked.
Was cool.
So the idea,
what I love is the way he's introduced is fucking excellent. The feet walking past the crack in the door, but then you zoom out and you realize he's bigger than the door because you can see his head silhouetted through the window. And
then they tease it really well. Yeah.
Then the door opens and he's just got that fucking severed head hanging down by. Wicked introduction for the big bad. To be fair, like.
So the idea is that the Japanese wanted to use this general who had allegedly killed 10,000 men, and obviously they exaggerated.
There's another thing you haven't explained. So you think you're explaining these films. Where did you explain what happened in the 16th century, mate?
There you go. You got to go back.
I have to know about that. Now I have to know what happened with Japan and Korea in 16th century. Mate, I'm having a hard enough time getting all the StarCraft shit down for 1,000.
This general who is fictional, obviously, and who is
well, Jesus, that I also don't know if it's real or not. Do I? I don't know if this is some actual famous shit.
The story they say is that this general who's bloodthirsty and killed 10,000 men and was 10 feet tall or whatever, obviously just like not real. But the reason why the Japanese exhumed him and brought him to Korea was because he was the fearsome guy who could defend the spike, right?
Right.
But he died at the Battle of Sekigahara, and the Battle of Sekigahara was the last battle that Tokugawa Ieyasu won to solidify the Tokugawa shogunate. So what this means...
Look, I was even going to say as a joke, is that the guy from Shogun or whatever? But
it is, yes.
I don't know any of these people, mate. Okay. It is actually, okay.
So the Shogun, the show, is fictional, but the main guy in Shogun is supposed to be Tokugawa.
Right.
But he has a different name in Shogun. But he is supposed to be Tokugawa. The battle at the end of the Shogun TV show is Sekigahara. That's the equivalent. So Sekigahara... It would also
help if I'd known that coming in.
So Sekigahara is a very important battle because what it did was it kicked off the Edo period and like 250 years of peace, like all of the feudal warring that was going on prior to that, ended in 1603. And so this is really the first domino that causes Korea and like to basically cause the invasion of Korea by Japan. Now they had invaded Korea previously, but they had failed. But what the Edo period does is it sets up the Meiji Restoration in 1868, and that means that Japan becomes a colonial power because they westernize. And so they all of a sudden have an advanced manufacturing economy, and they start taking over Taiwan and Korea and everything like that. So basically, the point is that battle caused peace in Japan. Peace in Japan eventually causes Japan to become a colonial power because they're not upset. They're not killing each other anymore. They're killing other people now. So Sekigahara is really important in Asian history, and because it obviously affected China too, because they took over Manchuria. They took over everything. They took over Southeast Asia.
Your Nobunaga erasure right now, Monty.
The Nobunaga and Hideyoshi erasure is real. Which, sorry. They're cool too. I mean, Hideyoshi was the one who, after Nobunaga died, was the one who...
the great unifier of Japan. This is outrageous.
Yeah, look, man, Tokugawa basically just came in and slurped up all of the feast that had been laid before him. It's true. He was kind of just the last guy standing. But anyway, I don't want to talk about that.
Well, we can't. Shit I don't know or care about. Do you want to talk about?
We're gonna have to.
Yeah, I know. Was that a red herring? Like, what were we talking about now?
So Hideyoshi, prior to Tokugawa, in the late 1590s.
My eyes glazed over about 10 minutes ago. Keep going.
So Hideyoshi did, in fact, invade Korea, but he failed at that time because he was trying to invade China and he had to go through Korea. And basically, the Koreans won via guerrilla war that ended with the Koreans and their turtle boats like winning a...
Whatever, keep going.
Winning a fleet battle, like a sea battle with their turtle boats, which is like probably the most important Korean military victory until the Korean War. Anyway, the point is that Sekigahara is interesting and important, and this guy was at Sekigahara, so they shipped him over.
And he was like the ultimate guy who won the battle, or last man standing or some shit.
He lost the battle technically to Tokugawa,
but he held off for as long as possible or some shit.
Yeah, and he was the big badass. So the reason that's why the reason they brought him in particular to become Katana Zombie and put him in the ground. And the reason why he doesn't want to punch the Buddhist scriptures is because they put him in a Buddhist temple first, so he was like scared of the Buddhist scriptures.
Okay. I actually low-key, no
really
joke.
Explained.
Part of me actually also would like to know, what would Japanese people think of this film? Would it be cool for them? Would they think it was disrespectful? I don't know. It'd be interesting.
I mean, not good relations between Korea and Japan for the last 100 years or so, or ever. But I would be curious to see what they think. I mean, there's a lot of Japanese language in this movie.
It's like we're veering into some very shaky territory now. I'm just coming to you, Monty, as well, because like I don't even know, which I don't even know, but like if you're equipped to answer it. But would you say the level of animus between South Korean, and Japanese is more than or less than the level of animus historically between Japan and China?
More.
That's a hard
probably.
one. Okay.
Wow, fuck me. That's
Swear,
hardcore.
Richard. Pretty
That's
sure, Richard.
hardcore as fuck. That's like Britain and France.
I don't want to repeat fake news, but I did see this not just from a random Facebook post like who people said for real that there was that supposedly when Oppenheimer was shown in Korea, people like low-key cheered in the scene where the nuclear bomb goes off.
I did hear that.
Wow.
Now
I didn't hear that.
also could just be a 4chan meme, but
It was pretty widespread, though, I will say.
Yeah,
But it sort of escaped containment,
but
didn't it?
also could be believed.
Because if people don't know, the weird thing in the modern day, which is like the main thing that in some ways is like a spike stopping the resentment ever going away, Monty knows this obviously, is the whole thing that like the one thing Japan does that no one can handle in that region is they deny the concept of the comfort women, basically the idea that they had these women that they just took from the local populaces and just used as sex prostitutes, basically. And because even though they're fine with everything else, like obviously they admit all the American shit and all the World War II stuff, they just won't admit that. And unfortunately, the refusal to admit that, basically, put it this way, it's way more scandalous than like the Armenian genocide concepts, etc. Like that is like a resentment point to this day, and that's still what sort of like that's what people go back to as a lightning rod, right, Monty?
Yeah, and there's also still territorial disputes on certain islands as well.
Well, there's that thing. To be fair, we do that in the West too, though.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Russia does that. They all do that. And it's always some bullshit island where no one lives as well. You know what I mean? It's always
it is
some
also
stupid shit like
an
that.
island where no one lives.
I've always told the story, Monty. Almost every time I would get on that train from Incheon Airport that takes about 50 minutes to go into Seoul, they would be playing like some actual propaganda level thing. Like, these islands are really Korea's, you know. Like, and I'm like, why is this in English? Showing to me, this is nuts,
It's true.
bro. I don't give a fuck, man.
You literally
figure it out.
So Richard, when you ask about the animus, if you come to Korea and you take the airport train, you will see a video in English about the Dokdo Islands, about how they belong to Korea and not
look
Japan.
it up, mate. There's nothing. It's like just a rock in the middle of the ocean. It's mental. It's mental.
That is wild.
It is.
That's definitely a
But
thing.
the point is, that's still a thing to this day. Yeah.
Is that ever getting sorted out then?
Probably not.
Why doesn't Trump get on that? He says he's the president of peace. Why is he not on this one? This sounds super easy to resolve. It must be.
Well, his buddy Shinzo Abe is no longer here, unfortunately.
True. R.I.P.
So anyway, this movie, like, I think it's cool. I think it's cool because it shows a lot about how the occult operates in the East, and like takes these concepts about ghosts and curses and everything and then views them through that cultural lens instead. And it brings it back, and it also shows how modern culture interacts with shamans, because in other occult movies, if you were to watch a contemporary movie, like let's say Hereditary, right? And there's these weird cultists and they're like ostensibly witches, or they're summoning this demon. They're not like a normal part of society. The shamans are just a normal part of Korean society. Like, they're just there around you at all times doing stuff. And nobody really bats an eye when you walk past one in, waving the knives around or the flags that you see in this film. Like, that's like a normal thing to see in Korea.
I'm just going from memory here, but isn't the way you see them when you're in Seoul, they have like little tents or something by the side of like the road or something? Is that the ones you're on about? For like the fortune telling and stuff. I'm pretty sure there was something weird like that.
Maybe sometimes they do that. Like a lot of times they're just like you'll be walking around in a park and there'll just be a bunch of people on drums and a shaman dancing, doing some kind of ritual. Or like I said, when you open a new business, you hire a mudang to come and like bless your business and do a ritual. And you'll see in Korea oftentimes above the doors and businesses there are these like dried fish that are decorated, and those are for good luck and often placed there by the shamans. So it's just around. It's just like in the atmosphere, in the same way that if you're in Japan, you'll walk past a million torii gates and Shinto shrines, right? And there are people who are still like honoring the shrines and taking care of them. It's this kind of like just pervasive societal undercurrent, and there are people who do feng shui grave geomancy, and that is finding an auspicious gravesite is very important, as we learn, because the whole reason why the grandfather's ghost is angry is because the feng shui on his grave was bad, and he's pissed. He's pissed because he's been like screaming for 100 years and his family has been ignoring him. So that's why he murders them, is because he's become like, I guess, the Korean equivalent of an onryo, which is the Japanese vengeful spirit, and he's just let loose into the world. But the reason why he's so angry and crazy is because his grave feng shui was bad. And we later find out that the reason why his grave feng shui was bad had nothing to do with his family and everything to do with this Japanese shaman who buried him. And the only purpose behind that location was to hide the samurai underneath him. Right. So it goes to show that these people, they were ignoring, their ancestors' spirit. And that's their crime. And they die for that.
Well, them's the rules. Apparently. And there are many. So don't fuck up whatever you do. I mean, look, just all joking aside, let's dial in and talk about what was good in the movie. Because this was it was kind of, I'm coming away giving this a 6. And, on the arbitrary out of 10.
I'll probably never rewatch this film, I got to tell you.
I might give it another rewatch because I feel that, the first time, I've got my education up now. I've learned enough about it. And thankfully, Monty's here to fill in the gaps about, there was also this famous battle in the 15th. Wicked. Okay, good. Know that now. So maybe I'll go back and watch it, next year or something. And, I might have a better appreciation. But first of all, even though arguably he's not the main character in it, Choi Min-sik, that's the guy from Old Boy. I think he's one of the best actors of his generation. And I don't even say one of the best South Korean actors. I think his range is incredible. And I'm not just talking about Old Boy, where he's absolutely fantastic, but obviously he was in the third in the Vengeance trilogy as well, in Lady Vengeance, where he had a small but sort of memorable role. It's really good. I love I Saw the Devil as well, which is just a great movie. And I just think he's got a really, really good range. There's also some movie, what's the one where he plays the music teacher? I can't remember what the fuck that's called. But anyway.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah, but he is just so good. And he's really good in this. He's got that. Now that he's in his 60s, he's got that kind of perfect, world-weary, hangdog, kind of. I have
one little note for you on that, though. And here's one thing. Do you know when we were doing the Robert Eggers arc, I made this point that Robert Eggers says he will never do a film set in the modern day because, for example, he thinks it would ruin the cinematic experience to pull out a mobile phone or something like that. There's an example of that in this film. Think about any film from the 90s that's an amazing Korean, Japanese film where there's the cop who's, again, he's been through the mill. It's all hard, right? How dope do they all look when they smoke?
Yeah.
How shit does that vape look in this fucking film?
I mean, yeah, the vape is lame.
But it's very, what I mean? Contemporary Korea. That's the thing is everybody in Korea.
That would have been iconic if he was smoking Marlboros or something, mate.
But what I think's good about him using the vape is, again, as we talked about earlier in the episode, it is that his modern career meeting old Korea. You know what I mean? So you have this contemporary of the, and it does look ridiculous, but by design, you've got this old geomancer.
It's very
deliberate. He can't even smoke cigarettes anymore. He's sucking on this tiny little vape. It's really, played. It's played straight by him, but obviously we're watching it and we can.
It's also funny because that guy was a lifelong smoker and now he switched and it's because of his daughter. I mean, the last line of this movie is basically a joke where he's like, "Well, I'm not going to die because my daughter's getting married."
Yeah, that's really funny as well.
편안하게. 잠깐만. 딸내미 결혼식.
The delivery on that, because he gives this insane honestly monologue about how he's dying. It's like the end of Carlito's Way. Get in the shakes now.
I also thought that was actually a little bit too sentimental. Mate, you make him so he's basically dead. In fact, in some ways, I thought he was going to die as one of those, he dies to sort of that's part of the redemption aspect of the story. But actually, the end with a happy ending.
Yeah, which maybe because the film is sort of steeped in death and a lot of heavy themes for a lot of the movie. Maybe they just felt they couldn't end on a downer, and so obviously
I like the ending. I think it's fine.
I mean, yeah, I didn't hate that it was a happy ending because it would have been kind of predictable if somebody died. I will add that the fact that you've got a guy nearly dies and then another guy nearly dies, kind of
See, this is where my director's cut is the movie ends, and just as that guy's recovering in hospital, someone comes in and goes, "You know what we have to do now, of course," translated, of course. And then he goes, "We have to put a stake in Japan. Then it's coming next year in the summer."
Exactly. Coming next year Exhuma.
Fuck with the fox, find out or something like that. You know, there you go. The tiger strikes back.
That would actually be a very Korean movie to make, to be fair.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
I mean,
but I wish the movie
some
ended.
Korean political candidate hit me up. I've got some ideas. Man.
So you know how they take that photo at the end at the wedding? I wish that like Hwarim, the main shaman, was kind of off to the side and like kind of obscured.
By the way,
so
Monty,
the implication would be she was a spirit, like Gisune, the Japanese shaman, was a spirit. I thought that would be cool.
In the horror genre, immediate first warning sign: someone in a photo isn't totally able to see who they are. If they're anyway shrouded, or if there's just someone in the photo they didn't identify, that's everything, mate. Immediately, first thing, just get the photo album out. That's what Hereditary taught us, mate. Photo albums are the key to all these movies.
I'll add as well, I didn't know much about the lead actress. Again, sorry if I'm butchering the pronunciation, but Kim Go-eun. Yeah, she's great.
Yeah, she's really good.
She's really good. I mean, I make the assumption whenever I see an attractive woman in a South Korean movie that she's probably come through like the idol system or was in a K-pop band or something like that and has been elevated. I always make that assumption, but I have no idea about her background, but she was really, really good in this and very good at holding your gaze when she was on camera with a lot of like very subtle facial acting, which I thought was really good considering she's only in her early 30s. And if you're on screen with Choi Min-sik, you got to do a good job, right? Like you have to have a good presence. I also thought the nerdy guy,
he's great.
Yoo Hae-jin,
yeah,
I thought he was really good. He's hilarious in the dub, by the way. They've given him a real nerdy voice. He sounds like, G. Glavin, like Dr. Frink. It's like Professor Frink from
I will say Kim Go-eun also won the equivalent of the Oscar for Best Actress for Korea for this movie. So she did get a major award.
She definitely, and also on top of all of that, like, as I said, I think the cast all do really well. I think the movie looks really
her assistant is really good. Bongil is also really good. I mean, I find all of the characters, I think what's so fun about one of the things that's fun about this movie is the four characters are all really distinct and they're all really well acted, so they have like nice synergy and like they play off each other really well.
Yeah, and the movie looks great. The cinematography is done by the same guy that did The Good, the Bad, and the Weird, and I Saw the Devil Again. What was the other one he did? The noir one, Asura. And so like it's a really good looking movie, and you can see the production value. Again, crazy to think. This is another thing I love about South Korean cinema. The way their movies look on the budgets that they have, it's almost unprecedented. Like, put it this way, a typical budget for a big budget South Korean movie will be like $11 million, $12 million, $15 million if they're going really crazy and swinging for the fences. And yet these movies look insanely good just because of the attention to detail and the craft. They've got some incredible cinematographers out there as well. And it's like this movie, I thought it looked really beautiful. Like, every shot I thought was really, really well done. We already talked about the monster. I love the design of the monster. I even like the little snake dudette.
Oh. Do you want to know about that? That's actually kind of important.
That's also just thrown in there as
which again, you have to know about Japanese spirits. Yeah. So there's a snake. I didn't get this in my summary, but there is a snake in the grave that is killed by one of the grave diggers. And what that does is it effectively breaks the seal that had been containing the grave. And what it is it's called a Nure Onna, which is a Japanese water spirit. Yeah. And again, this is all implied by Japanese elements, but effectively the 5 elements had been sealing the grave. Okay, to prevent the like ghosts and the samurai from getting out is the implication, but the elements are there. So the earth is the earth, right? The fire and the metal are the sword. It is the sword and the samurai. The wood is the coffin, and the water is actually this Japanese water spirit that's supposed to be in the grave. So basically, the implication is the Japanese put this other spirit there to like form the final elemental seal, I think, on the grave itself. But it's also a symbol because Korean viewers would instantly know that this is like a Japanese monster because it's the snake with the head of the woman. And so you would understand, like, why is this Japanese spirit in Korea, right? That's weird right away.
Yep. and of course, all over our heads. But I mean, you know, like I said, I think everything, all the design elements of the movie and how it was shot, I think were really, really good. I think it was like visually a fantastic movie. I think the performances were really good. It like drew me in. The dub is hilarious because of the disconnect between the words and how they're being delivered and the like dramatic facial expressions that are going on the screen. Do recommend. It's one of those like, you know, just fucking smoke a joint and watch the dub. Like you'll have a good time for sure. It is that ridiculous. But I mean, you know, unfortunately, I just think the movie just comes with too much baggage in the sense that when I go and see a film, you know, when I watch any movie, I understand that it's asking something of you. You know, it always asks something of the viewer, right? Whether it's, you know, patience, if it's long and meditative, suspension of disbelief, if it's fantastical. You know, you have to. It has to be participatory, and you have to accept that when you go in and watch a film, that you're gonna have to, you know, it's gonna take something of you, your attention. It has a requirement, a price of entry, if you will. And this one, it's just too high. I think it was just too high for me with my stupid Western brain of not knowing intimate details of South Korean history, Japanese mythology. By the way, I've got the book of Yokai over there.
Yes, you can go look up your Nure Onna in that.
Yeah, but here's the thing: I didn't know. Like, I knew it was a snake with a woman's head, but like again. I like what you've just told me there about the fact because it's a water snake and that completed the element of the seal and all that. That wasn't happening as I was watching it. You know?
No,
what I mean?
That's why I was really curious to have you guys watch this movie. Is because I wanted to know, because like obviously I come into it with a lot of different context. I have read books about Korean shamanism. Like I said, I visited Korean shamans. I've seen a lot of this kind of stuff. I've talked with my Korean father-in-law about feng shui geomancy. So I came in pretty well, you know, understanding.
I bet you're
Korean...
getting tested on levels you can't even fucking fathom, son. I bet like, you know, it's bad enough meeting the father-in-law, right? And having to pass all the tests, like and all that. He's like going, oh, well, you sit in a chair, 32-degree angle, is
it? So, I mean, like, you know, for me, I came in with a lot of knowledge about Korean Japanese history as well. And so it was really interesting to me, but I just didn't know how much of this translates, right? Because I come into it with a very different perspective. But for the burden of knowledge, I mean, it's clear that this film for a Korean audience has a very low burden of knowledge because of the massive success. This film made something like $100 million, almost all of which
crazy how
almost all of which is in Korea. And you guys have to remember, Korea's not China with 1.5 billion people. Korea has 50 million people. This movie made $2 for every person in Korea. That is crazy.
Yeah. I mean, for me as well, I think another area where it failed was it just never got scary. Like, it just wasn't scary. Again, I don't know.
For me, the scenes of possession and stuff didn't hit like they would if it was in the Christian context. I'm sorry, it just didn't for me.
Yeah. I think again, it might be cultural, but it just never felt scary. Like I loved the design on the 8-foot samurai man.
Yeah, it was cool, but I know what you mean. I was never scared.
Cool, but I weren't scared. No. Like, you know, I went like usually when I watch a horror film, you know, I want it to kind of get under my skin a little bit. You know what I mean? And like, so you know, the wind blows suddenly. Oh shit, you know, you're a little bit spooked for a while after. It didn't do that to me at all. It was very much like in and out. And it didn't like stay with me or like, you know. So the problem I think again is like probably I don't know. Would this be scary to South Koreans? Would they be freaked out by a lot of this shit? Like, would it be genuinely shocking to see someone?
The thing is, I don't come from this culture either, so I feel like I have the same reaction that you guys do.
I know we are just making you an honorary Korean for the purposes of this episode. So.
But you know, I came to Korea in my late 20s, right? And so my experience with it has been as an adult, so I don't have a lot of the same like cultural fears that I would have of Western stuff. So I don't know if I can answer that question either.
Yeah. But it certainly wasn't scary for me, and yet, you know, funnily enough, even The Exorcist, The Exorcist was held away from British audiences for a long period of time. It was a banned movie. It was considered so shocking. It didn't come out until I want to say early noughties. I think
Something
is when
meant
it
like
got
that for real. Yeah.
I think when it got re-released, because we had a big declassification of a bunch of like banned movies, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Clockwork Orange was a little bit of a different case because that was at the behest of Kubrick, and the studio. But then obviously the other one was The Exorcist. And look, I didn't find that the horror for me isn't in the demonic possession or Pazuzu and all of that stuff. The horror in that movie is the fact that this woman is at her fucking wit's end. Science has failed her, all medicine has failed her, and now she's having to take a leap of faith, quite literally, on the spiritual saving her and redeeming the life of her daughter.
That's true of this movie, though, too.
Sure, yeah. But what I'm saying is that element in The Exorcist got under my skin. Right, like The Exorcist is an affecting movie. People might not find it scary, particularly contemporary audiences, but I defy anyone to watch it and not come away feeling something. And yet this movie, I didn't really feel anything. I was like just sort of passive. Like I recognized, oh, that's a good performance, that's a good speech, that's that looks cool. But it didn't. It was just a movie to me. It didn't have any resonance, and I think unfortunately that's probably going to be the case for most of our audience too who watch it.
Sure.
I'd love it. I don't know if we have any South Korean.
Swear, we already referenced earlier. The film Cure is way scarier than this.
Yeah.
Yes.
That has some like ring elements where it's weird and creepy and what's going on, and you're not quite sure, and you're on tension the whole time.
Well,
I was more just seeing how this played out.
The other Korean film we've watched here, Gonjiam, is also significantly scarier than this, right? Old Boy.
Yeah, and that's done in
Old Boy's not even a horror movie, really. It's a thriller.
Yeah,
but
that's
it's
done in
significantly
a fun,
scarier than this.
house kind of way.
By the way, I think to answer the question about if Koreans still have a problem with Japan much, the number one grossing movie of all time is a film from 2014 that's about like, it looks like it's their version of like the Spartans against the Persians. It's like some Korean admiral that used 13 battleships against 300 Japanese
That's what
ships.
I was saying earlier.
Like, that's the number one selling film of all time
one.
in the 2010s. So far.
Also,
that's still a massive topic, clearly.
It also stars Choi Min-sik as well. So
listen, I'm not making any determinations, but I think I know which side is bread's buttered. You know what I mean? But yeah, look. So I mean, I'm glad. Put it this way, I'll say I don't know if I'm as out on the movie as Duncan was. I'm certainly glad I watched it because I will often say it is a throwaway statement. Oh, I really do like South Korean cinema, but obviously I'm only really watching the creme de la creme, the stuff that has that Western export. And I think while I've watched more Korean movies than like the average film goer, it's also true. There's stuff that I would never even think to watch. I would look at that and go, that kind of feels almost like uniquely Korean. Like it's not a film for the Western eye, essentially. And so, to engage with something that is more complex and complicated and more demanding of you as a member of the audience is always interesting. It's always a good thing to do. But ultimately, this one just sort of left me a little bit cold. It just didn't really do a lot for me, unfortunately. And I've made the commitment to myself. I am going to go back and rewatch it. But while I found the film interesting, it didn't really land for me. It was very, very bland, and I sort of just felt adrift a lot of the time.
So I mean, I think this movie, it doesn't scare me, but it does like keep me hooked. Like I think the pivot in the story where they find the second coffin and it's buried vertically is like a really fun moment. Where they figure out that there's something else going on, and the mystery of why the coffin would be vertically in the ground is like, I think it's like a cool trope.
Yeah, but it's what I mean. The setup is great. Like I actually really liked the setup. I really wanted this movie because it had that dread element. It was building. We talked about this in previous episodes. That's essential for a good occult film. You have to know something is wrong. And it's just evading you. It's elusive. You can't quite get a hold of it. And that's usually because of the machinations of the cult or the demonic powers that are operating in the shadows. That's a very, important mechanic of what you have to do with an occult film. And I was like, put it this way. I'd got over the initial struggle at the start with the, hi, I'm a geomancer, I'm feng shui, I'm a descended from a shaman, so I can do this. Once I'd got past, I was like, once I'd got past all of that, right? When we got to the whole first exhumation, they've solved it. No, we haven't solved it. There's a second coffin. What the fuck is that? Why is it buried vertically as opposed to horizontally? Why is it so big? It's like the fucking obelisk from 2001. Right,
it's cool.
I'm in at that point. The problem is the payoff for it is fucking also much like the start of the movie. It just requires too much of you. Like.
No, I totally agree, because the payoff is like you have to understand like that this goes back to Japanese Korean like war relations, and that, you know, the idea is that this film is about intergenerational like ancestor trauma on a personal level, but it's also about how the ghosts of the past are still, you know, affecting Korea today, basically. And the occult in this film,
the subtext is really interesting, and it definitely works.
Yeah,
I mean,
but the occult in this film is actually like a Japanese occult conspiracy to destroy the energy of the Korean land, and that is very abstract.
You know what I mean? Like, we're British. We've had beef with everyone. I can't start taking account of other people's beef. You know
no,
what I mean?
But I just think like what resonated with the Korean audience and what scared them in this movie is that the Japanese occupation had done like psychic damage to the land of Korea, and that there was a Japanese occult conspiracy of Japanese shamans and or I guess maybe real spirits of fox spirits that are somehow invading their land and tainting it forever and controlling their destiny. And that is a really abstract horror, and I don't think any of us can really appreciate that, but it definitely landed with Koreans.
I made the same point about Hereditary. I actually wish to draw the comparison back to Rosemary's Baby, that even though it's only slight, I actually like the inclusion of that Hutch character who's sort of like, no, there's something going on here. Exactly. I think those characters are useful, and I think sometimes you lack that. Like, if in this movie, Monty, one of the reveals later is they introduce a character who was like of the lineage of those patriots who were trying to remove those spikes and stuff, that would have been a cool aspect, I think, to sort of
That's a good idea.
You could have had some exposition with that. You could have explained some of it. That's why he was doing, and then it could have been like in the same way as this was going on, there was also a secret tradition behind the scenes, you know, of like the equivalent of an exorcist or something who helped do that part threw me a bit, because I do think essentially the problem here is I know nothing about Korea before like the Korean War almost. Like, funny enough, there's tons of like Joint Security Act. If you want to do movies about like Korea's war and its conflict with North Korea,
I mean,
can get into that.
That is an absolute bag.
It's
so
one of the best.
Good.
That's why it's not about not liking Korean movies, mate. The Vengeance Sagas, Mega. There's even actually, I can even appreciate some of the religious ones. There's that one, what's it, Spring, Summer, Winter, so whatever the fuck, the one with all the known names. It's like a very Buddhist movie. That's a fucking brilliant movie with very profound ideas in it. This one though, I actually think the problem was it was too busy. There's too much going on in the story that I could never even access, mate. I'm pretty good at like sort of trying to figure out while I'm watching a movie and think about things. I'm not even sure at the end I had the full framework. I just had the idea that it became eventually like Kill the Ghost movie, you know. That's what became at the end.
And like I said, none of the real horror is explicitly stated. And I think, and I really like your idea of having like an old timer from the crew who was taking out the spikes.
So that was interesting too. That was
a bridge
mysterious. The idea these patriots were doing that. That was kind of a cool angle.
Yeah, and the implication, I believe, as well, is that they were also shamans because they had all of the like the scripture on their pickaxes. If you got, or like all the writing on the pickaxes.
They even show
the
actual sequence, obviously, of when they were doing that, like burying the guy or whatever, don't they? Like, they show some of that shit. Yeah.
So I think that could have been like a really cool addition, or if they had found some more information about that somewhere, because that, again, you really are left to understand the cultural context on your own. Like I said, the fact that they say that, hey, this grave is really close to the North Korean border. That's where the spine, the waist of the tiger is. That's where the back was broken. And you just have to understand that the implication is that this was at least a factor in the breaking of the country between North and South Korea, right? And that legacy, and like did this spike put by this Japanese shaman cause the Korean War to be lost and the power and energy of the country to be fractured, so it's in a weaker geopolitical state today. And that, just kind of have to know that that's the thought process, and it's not ever explained.
I mean, again, it's such the premise is so unique to the we wouldn't really have anything like that. I guess the equivalent would be something like From Hell by Alan Moore, where the ley lines in under London have been sort of taken over by like some sort of satanic occult for the purposes of like leveraging their power or whatever, so there are some similarities, but again, I just thought it was a very
I think
very
the equivalent
opaque.
Yeah, the equivalent would be something like the ley lines, which are part of the Druidic tradition in the UK and in Ireland. Like the ley lines in Ireland had been affected, and therefore it caused the break between Northern Ireland and the Republic. Right, and that was done by evil UK Druids to weaken the Irish and gain control over them.
So I mean, look. Again, had a good time with it. Like, don't regret watching it or nothing. It wasn't like diabolical. I mean, when you think about some of the movies we've sat through,
it wasn't a terrible film.
No, it's definitely not a terrible film. I think, unfortunately, as I said, I would love to know if we do have any Korean fans that watch this podcast, which probably we don't, but if we do, definitely leave a comment and tell us what you thought about this film.
Also, please tell me if you can give us like an analog. Is there a Western film you think that could parallel to this? What's the Western equivalent of this?
Yeah, I'd really be interested because, again, I just felt ultimately that, like, when you watch a film and it's kind of like almost, it's not for you. It's like watching, this is a terrible example, I guess, but just follow me. When they make those really saccharine like rom-coms and they're obviously aimed at the feminine market, you know what I mean? And it's like, as a guy, you watch it, many of us have had to sit through these films with partners, and it's like, it's okay, it's cool that they exist, it's just not for you, it's just not for you, right? It's like somebody absolutely gets it, the intended market gets it. And in this, the intended market was very much South Koreans. And
it's like every musical on Earth for me.
Yeah, there you go.
I have not
agreed.
I think
me and Duncan.
That's actually a good analogy. If I can't, here's the thing, mate. I could go to an opera and appreciate the music and some of the sets. I'll never understand that. Oh no, I can't even hear the words, mate. It's not. Again, like I can see that there's something going on that people find brilliant, but I can't engage at all with it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's basically what this movie was for me. I mean, look, I think it's great. I'll say this. I think it's great that they made such an unapologetically Korean film.
I'm amazed how this could be such a bestseller.
Yeah, well,
it's quite a complicated film in some ways.
Well, I mean, there you go. That's also a cultural difference right there. Something like this, yeah, you're right. It's got all these complex moving parts, even for South Koreans to follow. It's quite an in-depth film. It's also from a genre that doesn't necessarily always do well at the box office. We're horror, and it's one of the highest grossing movies of all time because of its, almost like reverence for South Korean culture, and of course making the Japanese the bad guys.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen this twice now, and like I enjoyed watching it a second time as well because I feel like there is a lot to unpack in this movie, even if you understood all of the cultural references. Like, not every South Korean person is going to fully understand like feng shui, geomancy. Like, give me a break, you know what I mean? But the idea is, first off, it's a fun movie to talk about because there's a lot that happens and like a lot of these little clues. And it's one of those things that leaves you all these little tidbits and makes for good conversation. And also, like, I think it is a cool movie to rewatch once you understand where it's going, because I thought it was quite rewarding to watch a second time personally.
Here's what I vote for. As an olive branch, because I'm never going to watch this film again under any circumstance. Oh, you have to pay me. There you go. If you pay me, maybe I'll do it. Right? But I think in the future we should do a Korean cinema arc.
Okay.
Because there are some amazing Korean cinema films. I say it's not about liking or just like Korean cinema. I think there are some that people in the West would absolutely think we're fucking sick.
Yeah. Oh, well, undoubtedly. And unfortunately, America does remake a lot of those movies with disastrous results. But, I mean, look, I've listed a few, like just talking about it. Like what I love about South Korean cinema in general is it is very unapologetic in how it tells its stories, in the sense that I remember I was watching this I can't remember what it was called, The Beast, I think it's called, and basically the narrative through line, it's like a police procedural, and I think the Beast is ambition, essentially, is what they're alluding to. Anyway, watch it, it was good. There was this scene, and it was just so out of left field. Like, 1 minute they're just talking, and then the next scene is just they're talking in a morgue, and there is just a dead woman, naked, full frontal nudity, and the way the camera shot is, it's almost like peeking over the pubic mound to frame the shot. And I'm like, this would get cut probably in a Western sensibility. No, we're just talking around this corpse. We're probably making an artistic point here, but just deal with it. And I just love that. Like, Korean cinema, just fucking, it's in your face. If it needs to show violence, it shows violence. If it needs to be inscrutable, it will do that. It doesn't, a lot of the movies don't hold your hand. I think, again, it's why a lot of people bounce off, like, say, something like, Memories of Murder or something like that. When the Western analog to that is Zodiac, and everyone raves about it, and it's like, Memories of Murder, people go, oh yeah, but it's like really confusing at the start. Yeah, they're out of their depth. That's the fucking point. You know what I mean? That's the whole point. They're incompetent. The investigation was really badly handled, yes, and it's based on a true story. So, I love, there are so many great South Korean films that do have an export value, where you can sit down, watch them, and really the only thing that's even slightly isolating is the fucking subtitles. If you're one of the people who can't handle subtitles, I've got to be honest, I don't really have a lot of respect for you. People who say shit like, well, I want to watch a film, read a book, fuck off. But ultimately,
especially because it's such a noob self-report, like, you get past it so quickly. It's the same way. That would be like saying, I don't want to learn to read. It's really complicated, going slowly, saying all that. No, that's like, you haven't done it yet, mate. It's like, and once you've done it for a few years, it becomes second nature, doesn't it? Because that's actually why. But it's weird. I'll tell you a weird phenomenon. I have the opposite problem. In the modern day, the Zoomer thing now is because they're all on their phones. They have subtitles on the screen. Right? I find that really annoying, even though it's in my own language, because it keeps drawing my fucking eye down naturally, and I can't stop that reaction. So it automatically gets trained into you that your eye looks in a way and really quickly looks back and almost uses peripheral half the time. Like, it's really pretty sweet. That's why I also think doing a Korean arc will be cool, because it will show you that when it's a compelling enough film, you'll want to learn that skill. And spoiler, because we're not talking about a language, it's just subtitles. Once you have that, you have it for every country now, you dickhead. Now you can watch films from fucking South America, from fucking every part of Asia, wherever.
Here's the thing. It's why,
France,
as well,
Europe,
bad dubs.
all of it.
I mean, I can, if it's a choice between not being able to watch a film because it isn't subtitled, or like you watch a really, really dodgy dub, that never bothers me as well, because I've seen so much Italian cinema where it's all ADR, it's all recorded after
a lot
the
of dub
fact,
shit there,
and then dubbed. So I mean, even like classic movies like Good, the Bad, the Ugly, like things like this, there's scenes.
Well, the joke is the next film in this arc,
and it's not
Suspiria. Some people argue the dub's really good for that one. Actually, it's an interesting one to listen to. So there's a rare instance of where it works, even though, again, it's not going to be synced up at all. By the way, that's another thing, Richard. The other reason why, to me, it was obvious to learn the sub thing is not some elitist angle of like, I'm pretending I know Korean or fucking Japanese, like a lot of people definitely do. To me, it's just, I find it really jarring when the mouth isn't fitting the words. That is always a bit weird for me.
You've always got the problem of, how do I truly assess someone's performance if I'm listening to a dub?
Yes.
It's not them. Sometimes it is. I say one of the things that's interesting about the Italian cinema is sometimes the actors did ADR their own.
That's probably why that one works, I'm guessing.
Yeah, well, but not always as well, and then it's like, you've got crazy people like, Klaus Kinski, these insane actors, and then it's like the guy doing their dub is like just some, Italian dude who speaks really good English. And, you've got that disconnect of like, how can I assess how good they are in this film? Because I'm not hearing the vocal component of their performance. Or if I am, I'm not hearing it in real time. So it is hard. But I mean, like, again, you very quickly get over it. I mean, the reason Italians did it that way was because obviously it just was easier. It was a lot easier. It meant you could get your scenes out, you could get your scenes done quicker. And they used, what was it called? The Babel School, which is crazy in the sense that, as in the Tower of Babel, as in what they would do is if you were a Spanish actor, you would deliver your line in Spanish. You're English, you deliver it in English. You're Italian, you deliver it in Italian. And we just
sounds like madness for all. It sounds like madness.
You're gonna see this in Suspiria, like
exactly.
And the thing is, the Italians
what I'm doing is I'm priming the pump.
Yeah, the Italians got used to it, so that even when they made movies in English, they would still post dub them, which they did in Suspiria, which also makes it so when you're watching the movie, it's like the lips don't always exactly line up, even though you can tell they're speaking English because they said the line and then they're trying to like post dub it, so it ends up kind of janky still.
Yeah, which again, that's just that. I was talking about the price of entry. That's the price of entry to a lot of great Italian movies, and certainly Suspiria is one of those. I mean, you might initially bounce off it. It can be a little bit jarring, particularly if you've not watched a lot of Italian films. But ultimately, the way that they dub those is it's just part and parcel of how they made movies at that time, and shouldn't be discounting. But anyway, I agree. I second a South Korean cinema arc in the not too distant future, because there are so many great movies. This might be one of them for many Koreans, but
I don't think it's among the greatest. Like I said, as much as I like to talk about this movie, for the same reasons you guys feel about, not really being scared. I also think it packs in a lot. And at the end of the day, as somebody who's lived in Korea for a long time, I'm not discounting the effect of Japan on Korea, but it does feel like they retreat to Japan is the bad guy again, like too many times. And because it doesn't do that at the beginning, and then Japan suddenly becomes the bad guy halfway through the movie, it does grate on me a little bit, right?
I mean, listen,
I wanted there to be a more creative... I wanted there to be more creative villain than, it's Japan again. But at the same time, they do a good job, I think, of showing like a lot of the ripple effects of the Japanese occupation in this, and how it affected families across generations, how it affected the land itself. And I think there's really cool metaphors here. So I'm much more forgiving of this film in particular than some other forms of Korean cinema. Like I was watching this K-drama that was very popular called Gyeongsang Creature, which is terrible, and also about the Japanese occupation. Terrible, really bad. It's basically like the concept of it is that, I really don't like TV K-dramas because I think they're almost all terrible and like melodramas and soap operas. But this one takes place during the imperial occupation of Japan, where the idea is that the Japanese were doing human experiments in the same way that they did in Manchuria and China, except they were making like horror monsters that escape and run amok. Anyway, it's not good. It's very bad.
But I'll add, for every one of them, you get Kingdom.
Sure. Yeah. Kingdom is rad.
Which fucking, I love that. That's absolute bang.
Kingdom is a Joseon Korean feudal zombie show, which is very fun.
The worst thing about it is how it blue balls you. It does the full Game of Thrones thing, like with the White Walkers, because the entire first season's building up to the zombie invasion, and then see you in season 2, like you fucking bastards. Like,
so anyway, there's a lot obviously to unpack there, but like I said, I think I'd be interested to see what the comments are like for this film, because if you guys watched it, probably many of you have no idea what was really going on, but hopefully you can see a different lens of the occult horror, which was the purpose behind me wanting to do this film, because I feel like maybe you learned something at the end of the day, or maybe you had a new appreciation for...
You definitely have learned something, but the problem is you've learned too fucking much. That's the thing. It's like an educational movie for fucking not only Korean and Japanese friction, but the 3 different flavors of occultic knowledge. Like
I think it's cool.
Like, just give me a fucking break, please. So, but look, again, I'm glad you recommended it. That's that. It was certainly I did learn a lot, too much in a way.
Well, another film, as we mentioned, you may bounce off of is the original Suspiria from 1977. I feel like the first half of this arc, we had Rosemary's Baby, we had Hereditary. These are very accessible movies. The second half of this arc, It's definitely a lot weirder. Like Suspiria on its surface is quite, it appears to be quite accessible, but the way in which it's directed, as well as I would argue the writing and performances, maybe you'll bounce off of it. I liked it.
It is just an aesthetic must.
Yes.
You have to watch this film.
The vibes are immaculate.
There's no film like this.
I mean, put it this way. We've talked about this with like Michael Mann and other directors. This is the single greatest use of a color palette in a film, probably ever. You know,
the aesthetic is great.
It is incredibly
awesome.
psychedelic. No one ever mentions that aspect of it. When I watched it, I remember even thinking.
Well, we nearly put it in our psychedelic horror,
yeah,
didn't we?
I remember when I watched this, I thought I'm not even a massive horror fan, but this movie is just something else, mate. Yeah, it'll stay with you forever. This film when you watch it.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't have to sit a fucking entrance exam about Italian history or witchcraft to appreciate it.
No, there's not, because they just yell witch constantly in the soundtrack, so you never
and
confused about what's going on.
As a boy, obviously. Going to be specific to me. If as a boy you enjoyed Roald Dahl's Witches, there's your primer. You're going to fucking love this movie.
That's a good one.
Grown-up version.
Actually.
All right. So we'll see you guys next week for the conclusion of our Occult Horror Arc with Suspiria.